All right, we call the meeting to order. December 10th, 2015 meeting. I guess introductions, starting over here.
Carrie Lee. Jen Byron.
Mishka Haddock.
Susan Levinson.
Jeff Wheeler.
Gene Reed.
Tony Dumas.
Dawn Arnold.
Mark.
Suzanne Eden.
Let's do a review of the meeting minutes from November 19th. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Any additions, corrections, deletions?
Second on that one. Oh, it was me. Thanks, Jen.
Jen.
I just had one on there, line 169, page 5. It just says, MPAC, Mr. Haddock reported committee selected 3 companies to interviews. He asked me to-
Line 118, page 4, I'm still Miss Fernald, F-E-R-N-A-L-D.
All right.
A minute here to review it.
Line 167 on page 5, Dale Transportation is D-A-I-L.
D-A-I-L.
On page 160, line 167, page 5.
D-A-I-L.
So, 177,
Yeah.
off of his support sheet, Bill Chalk, semicolon, and delete up the rest of that semicolon.
Okay.
I didn't make a statement about whether I was in favor of or not of the Clint. It was more of an endorsement of the chief.
Okay. Wait, I'm deleting that.
Delete and his requested purchase of the Clint.
Got it.
There, line 120, I believe that, reached approximately 90% of 3 out of the 6 zones in Nottingham stated. I believe the other 3 still have to be tested. Or reviewed,
No,
or-
no, he's been saying even with 90% of the homes.
But it was 3 out of the 6 zones at that meeting that he said. I did take notes.
I don't think that that's what, I think that your notes may be combining a couple of things. But he's clearly stated the CIP that it was 90%.
We were talking about what the zones in particular were, and I said.
He said that he's tested 3 of the 6 zones.
Correct, which is what.
He feels he can cover 90% of the homes.
Oh, is there something?
Yeah, I think you should verify.
Check that up. Easy to do.
Yes. I thought that's what it stated.
Any other changes? On the minute?
I'm sorry?
One on the minute?
No, I wasn't here, so I'm not gonna vote.
Okay. Any other changes, additions, corrections? Can you get a motion to accept as amended?
Motion to accept as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, I want to welcome the folks from the SAU and the school.
Abstain.
Oh, abstain, I'm sorry. I want to welcome the folks from the SAU and the school here today. Appreciate coming back for the second round, and it's your show.
All right, well, first of all, I handed everybody out a package that you can load into your binder. I'll bring you the materials as they are produced or completed. You've got your proposed budget that we'll be talking about tonight. Did everybody get one of these?
Yes.
Did you-
Michael, do you need
Mike
some? You
needs
need some, Mike needs some.
We've got one.
Do another one, Don? I've already got my binder outfitted. Huh?
Yeah,
Just
last
put mine in.
we found an extra on the table. So did somebody else not have a binder this week?
Your binder.
Oh, I left mine. I'm not gonna carry that big binder around. Okay. I appreciate it, but I can organize this.
Okay.
You can donate it back to the SAU if you
You may take it.
Did you get it back?
I do.
Okay.
And if you want more binders, I probably have additional ones.
Well, there you go. So in the materials that I handed out tonight is the proposed budget that I'll be talking about tonight. You've got the default budget in there, the monthly financial reviews, the SAU budget, and the preschool budget. So, again, you can load those in your binder for your reference.
Perfect.
If it's okay, what I'd like to do is just take you through the budget, page by page, and identify any changes that we've had since the last budget. And in doing so, if you have any questions along the way, please jump in and interrupt me at any time.
All right.
Does that sound like a good idea?
Sounds perfect.
All right. On page 1, we'll start right off with the teacher salaries. You'll notice that there's a $50,000 reduction since your last budget presentation. And that was an adjustment in 3 retirements that we had in there that are actually going to be coming in FY 17-18, so those were taken out of this and put in that. And there's also a $10,000 adjustment for our summer academy that was not in there, so total comes out to a $50,000 reduction to that line. If you go down a little bit further, you'll see regular ed paraprofessional salaries, addition of $16,200. Again, this is adding a regular ed aide for a kindergarten classroom. So those are the changes on page 1.
Can I ask, what's the date of the previous proposed budget that you're comparing it to? Because I'm looking at the numbers for line 1, and it looks like a $50,000 increase, not a reduction.
What's the date on the bottom of the one?
The previous one I had was November 10th, and tonight's is December 8th.
See the same thing here.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, I would have to
The
look
one that I
back.
had in my binder was from 11/17.
Oh,
So I thought that was the one that you guys had received because I haven't changed mine at all and I thought mine was the same one that went out with your packet. All the binders are prepared the same day, so that's the only other one I have in there.
yeah. It looks like we all got November 10th.
All right, then let me just take you down page by page, and again, I'll try to identify the changes, and again, if you have any questions on any particular page, let me know. Okay. On page 2, again, you're gonna see your health insurance adjustments on that page, as well as retirement, all your comparable benefits. So you may see some minor changes on that page as well.
So the increases in the retirement and so forth are because of the,
Right, any adjustment to your salary lines on
Right,
page
result.
1 are gonna be reflected on page 2 with the benefit.
gotcha.
On page 3, we've adjusted the tuition, both to Dover and Co-Brown. Now, those numbers are, we're gonna try to get those as accurate as possible, and what I mean by that is we go off present enrollment. So between now and the time that we finalize this budget, if we have students that move out or move in, obviously we'll adjust accordingly. But we'll try to keep those numbers running as accurately as we can, up to the time that you finally approve the budget.
You have a number of Dover students that are shifting over to Co-Brown? Given the change in policy?
I would have to check, Mark, I'm trying to think. I mean, transferring flat out from Dover to Co-Brown.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if we have any of those or not. I'd have to check. I mean, it hasn't been, if it's been any, it's been one or two.
It'd be a good number to have. It'd be good to know. If it's 0, then, you know, that tells us something. If it's 10, it tells us something.
You mean during the school year?
No, from one grade to another. Somebody was a freshman,
Yeah,
and because of the policy change, they're now moving over to Co-Brown as a sophomore.
Because of the MOU that we have?
No, because the
No.
policy
The
change.
MOU provides that we pay the tuition, so you're saying that the tuition's being paid, you think more people will be going over?
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Okay. I don't think that, in terms of our enrollment report, and we need to give you guys December as well, we
I'm
had the
trying
same
to think.
shifts, we had 86 and
yeah, I'm
we
trying
only
to think.
15
I
or
don't
something.
think we've had any, but I can double check that number and get that for you. That's an easy number to get. Any other questions on page 3?
The tuition and anticipated move-ins,
Yep.
historically, we've had move-outs and not move-ins, or stayed the same, isn't that correct or wrong?
Well, it's really hard to predict, Gene. I think that, you know, typically we will get a couple of move-outs and some move-ins. To predict exactly what that number is gonna be, I don't know.
So what was the basis for predicting this then?
Because we've gotta have a budget number there for, if somebody moves in and we don't have any money budgeted, for anticipated move-ins at all, we have to find that sum of money from the general budget, somewhere else, from the
Yep.
K-8.
Yep,
So we took 4 move-ins as anticipated and put that in there as a marker.
and historically, it's been what? You base this judgment of 4 on history. I mean, it has to be based, I would hope that it's based on something.
Well, we tried to keep it as low as possible. But again, if you don't put any in there, I can't predict in a crystal ball if we're gonna have 4 move-ins and 4 move-outs, and historical reference on that is a little bit difficult to. I mean, if we go by historical reference and let's just say it's average, coming in static, if you get 4 move-ins, your historical reference doesn't do you any good, you're behind that sum of money, so. You know, we
So
thought it was,
buffer is the case in that.
we thought it was reasonable to put 4 in there.
But given that consistently every year, the school underruns its budget by $300,000 to $500,000, don't you already have plenty of wiggle room built in?
I'm not sure I would call it wiggle room.
$300,000 to $500,000 is a lot of money.
If our, like last year, we had a number of students that either transferred or moved out, and we had, some room in that Co-Brown line. That's the wiggle room you're talking about, then certainly that could be utilized.
I'm talking
Like
about,
I said, I can't look into a crystal ball and try to get that as tight as possible, because if I'm wrong, then we're pulling, you know, $60,000 out of your K-8.
no, I'm talking about on the overall budget, since I've been involved, and I think prior to this, because I think Michael has brought this up as an issue almost every single year, the budget on an overall basis is $300,000 to $500,000 underspent every single year. And so padding this, why pad this when you know you're gonna be $300,000 to $500,000?
Well, I don't know that we're gonna be $300,000 to $500,000, and,
Well, history has
you know,
shown.
we're on a default budget this year, so. we're trying to be as conservative as we can on our default budget, because, you know, we don't wanna get to middle of the year and have to restrict programming because we're on a default budget, so. But, I mean, that's why we put it in there, and, you know,
It was there last year too, I believe. And at the end of the day, the surplus does go back. It's been returned,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's not the point.
But that's the reasoning why it's in there.
It's not an excuse, okay, I should say. It's not a valid excuse.
It's not an excuse. It's a statement. Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
So this, we'll have a chance, Jeff, Chairman, to make proposals to this budget at a future date.
We will. Yeah, once we have the tax impact and whatnot, we'll have one more review
Yeah.
where we all go through the budget, line by line, and we can make recommendations and to raise or lower something that's not contract dependent according to CBA, and then ratify at that point as a recommendation going towards the,
Yeah.
meeting. You know that you've been here last year, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yep, absolutely.
So, as the superintendent mentioned, this is a proposed budget to the budget committee.
Yep.
Who's charged with preparing the budget.
Fully aware of that.
Yep. No, I know you are. So I was just a general assumption.
So I would assume at the next presentation, is that the presentation that you'd like us to go line by line and present it that way?
Yeah, that'd be on January 7th.
Yeah.
That'd be the final review with tax impact, so we can do it at that point, and, that's a good time for it.
Sure.
And can there still be changes made between January 7th after you have your input and we have conversation in between that and the hearing? Because we have like first, second, third drafts and then a hearing, right?
But yeah, there's a public hearing on that, and of course, the snow date, where big changes be made during that meeting.
Okay.
Um,
In between the third draft, when we present and get feedback from the committee, there can also be changes at the hearing when we bring forth essentially the
Right.
fourth.
The fourth time, at the
Yeah.
deliberative session, yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And as I said, as I present tonight, if there's anything that you'd like me to bring back to the board for discussion, like the number for the move-ins, let me know, and I'll be glad to bring that back to the board and have further discussion on that.
How does that happen? If I say bring it, would you bring it to the board? Is that enough to
What's
act
that?
on? I said, how does that happen for you to bring it back to the board? Do we vote on that, we'll bring it to the board, or Mark's raising the question? Does that?
I'm taking notes as we go through, and anything that comes up as a point of interest or a point of
Okay.
discussion tonight, I intend to bring it back to the board and say, this is the discussion we had.
Okay.
I'm writing it down as well. For example, the student count, that's switching either Co-Brown to Dover, vice
Yep.
versa, so that'd be one of the items in that list.
Yeah, so I mean, Gene, I don't think it needs to be any kind of formal motion. I'm, you
I
know,
was hoping not, but I just
No,
wanna make
no,
sure we're all
not
on
at
the
all.
same page.
not at all.
Good.
So I'll bring all of this back to the board for discussion. On page 4, you've got your supplies and workbooks, textbooks. Moving down that page, I believe everything was fairly static on that page.
There was a question, the classroom textbooks for language arts. The previous version had a, I don't know if that was the idea of getting the new textbooks was taken out of the budget, or was it
Yeah.
$100,000 before?
Yeah, originally there was $100,000 in there for language arts program, and in trying to get a budget where we thought was reasonable, we made some tough discussions and tough decisions, and we decided, at least to this point, to take that $100,000 out and put it in a warrant article.
So is that the K-6 reading program, is that going away as well? It looks like 100,000 of that was for a new reading program.
Yes.
That'll be going into a warrant.
It will, okay.
Currently, they have the Storytown program, and there's a policy that cycles things through over, I think, 5 or 6 years now, the
I mean,
curriculum
the 6-year
director.
cycle now, we've had Storytown for 8 years. And so the current language arts program we use, K-6, is outdated. It's not Common Core compliant, doesn't address the new standards for the the new assessments the state uses and we use as well. So we're looking for a program that will meet our needs of our students. Currently, the teachers supplement with quite a bit of resources to get it to where it needs to be. And there are resources out there now, again, we're within our curriculum revision cycle, that are much more catered to current standards, current assessments, and best practices.
And if you recall, this was let go, this policy, if you will, and we ended up with a situation where we had textbooks that were well out of date, and so we had to address that one kind of, so, right now, we're on point and we're following policy and making recommendations based on that.
Our
Based
goal
on
is
Common
to-
Core, or?
Well, our goal is not to have to buy 6 or 7 or 2 or 3 even different types of textbooks or resources for those subjects. But to build in a 6 to 8 year cycle where we review and revise and then if need be purchase new materials for every subject, unified arts included. And so we have in place now in board policy, a program that does that. It's much like we do with our buildings and how we have funds that we're putting away for, we're gonna plan for the future. This one is a larger nut than you would see, say, for social studies or science. Arguably, the most important thing we do in school is teach kids to read. It is the most important thing, reading and literacy and numeracy. And of those, literacy is job one. It's also the program that has the most peripherals, the most trade books and extra pieces of workbooks, et cetera, which is why it's at a little bit of a higher cost. And our building is also the one that is the oldest and the most in need of review, so that's why the time to bring this forward. The next cycle is unified arts, and you won't see much, I think, as far as resources coming out in that cycle. And then after that, we say we'll do social studies and then math. We try to offset the most expensive programs, so they would be coming up within a few years of each other.
What's the thought process of taking it out of the operating budget into a warrant article?
Well, when we were looking over our budget, we were trying to present what we thought was a responsible budget, and pulling that out obviously helped our budget out and gave the general population an opportunity to make that decision.
Will that be a standalone warrant article for language arts, 100K, or is that gonna be a combination of
It's a standalone.
standalone? I missed the meeting, but do we have the warrant articles or?
Not
general-
yet, they haven't been finalized yet.
And when do you expect those?
For the
Possibly
third,
next
are we bringing tax impact as per the schedule
Yes.
for the third?
Yeah.
So we're just following the schedule. So the third draft, if you will, we'll have,
On January 7th.
yeah. So we should be able to have we talked about our warrant articles.
Yeah, and we'll use the same method that once they're finalized by the school board, we can email them to you and then bring you hard copies to the meeting.
Would you highlight any other things that you might think are removed for the budget as we go along that are gonna stand alone, or is
I'm
that the
trying to
biggest?
think, I think that's the only one, Gene, that was pulled out.
Okay.
On page 5, you'll see a little increase in special ed para salaries. Those are based on needs of students. Anything you want to add to that, Scott?
Based on the numbers coming out of the preschool and the numbers leaving 8th grade and going into Dover, we had to add one more paraprofessional position to the Nottingham school to meet the students' needs.
Is this in response to your proposal to have 2 added?
No, this was separate.
This is completely separate from that.
That was an analysis that was done in August out of my office, student need out of the preschool and leaving.
So do these 2 things relate to each other at all, or are we gonna see yours somewhere else?
We reduced ours, my proposal for 2 to 1.
Oh, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, well, we reduced it to 1, not because of that necessarily, that was just coincidence.
Okay.
Because we're looking at targeting 2 different types of students. So
So are we seeing, in this paras, are we seeing one additional person or two additional?
Under special education one.
Oh, this is special education.
Yeah, you're on
I'm
the
sorry.
special ed section.
Apologize.
And actually, that was, we knew that was coming in August.
Yeah.
So when we did our analysis over the summer.
Okay.
So Scott, are you saying that's based on an IEP?
Yeah, we know what we have coming up. I mean, we generally know what we have leaving the preschool and coming to the Nottingham school, the Northwood school, the Stratford school. So what we try to do is take a look at the eighth graders and their needs exiting, right?
Yep.
And what we have for paraprofessionals available after they leave eighth grade, and then sort of hedge that off of what's coming in. And then either go up or down
Okay.
from there each year. And I think you can see that historically in other budgets where I reduce, when we can reduce. In this budget, I'm adding, which I haven't necessarily done in Nottingham since my arrival.
I don't mean to. Keep going.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not a valuable question. I don't wanna cause issues.
If you wanna take a look at the one thing, if people weren't at the last meeting, the special ed coordinator, I don't want people to think that's somebody's salary, that's 50% of somebody's salary and all their benefits and all the employee costs divided by 2 and split between Northwood and Nottingham. So if you just look at the sped para line, just look one up above and understand that it's not a standalone salary.
So it's our share of one.
It's your share of the total cost.
We share with Northwood, which has been a great plan, I think, for us.
If you look further down, your health insurance reduction, generally everything's pretty much static.
Moving on to page 6,
I got one question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Page 5 on, extended school year program, high school.
Can you give me the number? 5120,
Yeah.
000?
Yep.
5120.
Previously, all those services were lumped into one line and we've broken them out.
Okay.
The board would like to see a split out between elementary and high school costs, so we've tried to do that for them. Is that your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Why are the previous year numbers changing from the last time? So for example, the 1 year prior on the sped secretary was 18,113 and now, and it was 17,877. The extended year program elementary is 21,598,
yeah,
it was 25.
the special ed secretary, that was, if you recall our discussion about a salary pool, a 3% salary pool, and we mentioned at the last meeting that we were going to, because of the confusion that we had at the last meeting, we were gonna take that pool and put it back into those lines, so you'd see an accurate reflection. That's one of those lines.
Okay, and does the same hold true for extended school year program elementary?
Right below it, no, two different questions, two different answers. So what is your question on extended school year?
Well, in the first draft budget, it was stated as 25,000, going down to 21,950. This year, this month, this one, it's stated as 21,598, going up to 21,950.
The report number that we have here, Margie, just for clarification, is report 14385, and it's dated 11/10. So I don't,
The school board has a policy that no line items, when we're reviewing our monthly financials, that no lines are to be overexpended. So I need to find the money somewhere else in that financial statement, budgetary wise, and move the budgetary amount from one line to another. So if I'm looking at a line and I see that we're $5,000 overspent on one line, I need to find that money from somewhere else to cover that. So you're looking at the 1 year prior revised budget, and that's where that happens.
So you're revising the prior year budget all throughout the year in order to make your line items not look overspent?
Correct.
function, your cost centers.
Not, you are making adjustments that you bring to the board and say, I'm gonna,
Correct. There's a policy
doesn't-
that if they're in if they're in like functions, so if it's in regular education, and I have one line overspent, and I have another line that's underspent, I can move that by myself. As well as if it's less than $5,000. If it's more than $5,000, I need to get board approval.
But it ultimately doesn't change the bottom line.
It
just-
does
it's
not
just
change the bottom
internal
line,
lines
it's
that
just
change.
within the individual lines.
Yeah.
So those are also known as line item transfers?
Yes, we call them budget adjustments.
Can you keep a record of which line's been subtracted from and added to?
Yep. I have to fill out a form every time I make one.
Because this column really is, this is your running actuals. This is really not the budget. This is the running actuals. The budget was your kind of line in the sand of, this is what I think I'm gonna be spending, but your actuals are changing from that. So this is actually this is the year that you're in, the actuals, that's what's going on here. Right, that explains it. Okay.
So do you use those actuals, that running line that's currently being adjusted, do you use that in your next year's talks to say, obviously, this is where we need to be, and it may look like it's this huge increase from the other end of it, but that's all taken into account?
Right.
Anything else on file?
Is it helpful for you folks that are doing this proposed budget to know what line items were available to transfer funds to? And the line item they go to, in other words, one line possibly was over budgeted or underspent, and then that less than $5,000 was transferred to another line that was in jeopardy of being overspent, but the bottom line doesn't change, I understand that. But for budgeting purposes, does the board review the transfers to say, we're a little low on this actually, and the way we met budget was to transfer it from line
Right, so you can budget accordingly for the new budget.
for the new budget? Is that taken into consideration for budgeting?
I think all of that's taken into consideration. Obviously, it's not an exact science, but we do the best we can.
Do you find there's a particular line item that is continually, year after year, having to be made up for, or is there a trend, or is it just dependent upon?
No,
it's
there's
dependent
not
every
really
year.
a trend, it just depends on what's happening. This year, for instance, I mean, we saw savings in the health insurance lines. So I know that if something happens that's detriment to the school that we need to get done, you know, I can kind of say like, okay, well, if something breaks, okay, I can probably pull money from there to fix it. And knowing as we're going through the budget process of, okay, something broke, let's look at the actuals, let's see what we need to account for and what we don't need to account for as we go through the year.
On page 6, again, continuing on special education, halfway down the page, you'll see special ed preschool. That's now an actual number. Anything else, Scott, on page 6?
Yeah, actually, there's a couple of things on page 6. I think I went over this the last time, but if you look at the teacher at the deaf high school, and the services for the IEP, it's $37,489. If you look down, to teacher of the deaf elementary, you'll see that obviously those children went on to high school, and because of the high school schedule, we can't necessarily service together, because people are different classes, they've seen an increase in cost.
But it's offset on the next line that you mentioned.
Well, it isn't totally offset,
No,
but it's
but
offset by
partially,
22,000.
not dollar for dollar.
Yeah. If you look at, the increase in the paraprofessional lines, you've got 6 paraprofessionals at Dover and 1 at Co-Brown, and there are the rates in there. The big change is the Dover High School special education tuition. With the adoption of the new contract, we need to place the, children based on their IEPs on different tiers, and we've left that tier information for you. So you can see there's an increase there. The preschool went up a little bit, just because your census and your 3-year average went up. You can see your differential rate for Co-Brown there. And the good news is if special ed tuition, non-public elementary, which is out-of-district placements, is down 32,000, and actually if you go back to 13, 14, you can see a significant decrease in your out-of-district costs.
That's all.
Corresponding, you have a tab in back that has the out-of-district information and the transportation cost in it that you can detail out. But if I look at your out-of-district placements really quick, I can tell you, I can't tell you specifically for Nottingham, although I can look it up. I can tell you that the SAU as a whole, there was 34 when I started in 13, and I think Nottingham right now, it looks like 4, but 1 is a curriculum piece for an autism curriculum. It's about $1,200 a year. So you really have 3 out-of-district placements, 1 high school and 2 elementary. So you're doing very well there financially. Move on to page 7.
Any other questions? Page 7, Scott, finishing off special education and then moving down into co-curriculars.
I think I explained before in the testing supplies, every so many years the publishers come out with normative updates to our assessments that we use to identify, program, and discharge students. This was a big year for the test publishers in renorming. I wish they could do 1 a year, but they don't necessarily do that, so you see an increase in your testing supplies. So a lot of your increase in special education, I know the last year you were down 7%, and the year before you were down, I can't remember exactly what the percentage is that you're up this year. But primarily that has to do with the new tuition contract structure at Dover, the addition of paraprofessionals, some other minor things. The salary increase is based off the collective bargaining agreement. Any questions about the special ed section?
Okay.
Good, I'm sorry, where are we here? Line, about halfway down, it says new furniture and then replacement equipment. In the previous budget, you had a 200 and 100 plus increase, and now suddenly you've got a huge decrease. What's the cause of
I
that
need
change?
to defer to the building principal for that piece.
Okay. You see, it's line 1200-5733-061. It says new furniture here, it's down 325, proposed budget of 0.
We made several cuts, and some of the cuts impacted this. Those were, for instance, the 996 were for sound panels
Okay.
to insulate one of the offices away from some general area that teachers are, because confidential material to discuss. We moved those, looking at alternatives to soundproof that, including moving meeting spaces or looking at other ways to insulate the wall.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, as the budget goes too, I mean, you bring your first draft out, there were some additional contractual items that needed to be added, and so you have to just continue to rework and reorganize some of the numbers.
Okay, at the bottom of 7 and moving on to page 8 are your co-curricular salaries. If I look down page 8, again, I believe it's pretty similar to the budget you had given to you in the past. You've got a $1,000 increase on athletic salaries, mostly for volleyball. And then I believe down the bottom of that page, replace equipment, $921. Again, most of that is a volleyball stand there as well, a padded volleyball stand for the program. Any other questions on page 8? Page 9, we're moving into guidance. You'll see a slight increase on guidance as we noted last time. Chris, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, and I handed out, the last meeting, our budget drivers overview, and I'll give updated one at the next meeting. And this is mentioned in that handout, under personnel. It's a $9,931 increase overall to move from a 4-day-a-week guidance counselor for K-4 students to a 5-day. The role of the guidance counselor has changed dramatically over the last several years. Our guidance counselors are not only guidance counselors in the sense where the students come to them in the council, but they're teaching guidance counselors, going into the classroom, working actively with co-teaching with teachers and then building their own lessons in the classroom for the students as well. I've included a chart in that handout that talks about where we've been for the last several years as far as the guidance position. From 2007 to 2009, it was a 20% position, capable of approximately 200 students. Designed and taught 30 new guidance lessons in grades K-4. 2009 and 2014, it was 80% position for now. About 260 students, and are designed and taught again.
Sorry,
Some
Chris.
lessons as well. Also, then we added the co-chair of the child study team, which is students who are in need or have an emergency situation who meet together and begin to put plans to address those students, mostly around guidance and social emotional behavioral issues. Special ed service provider, so I moved working with our guidance counselors more, and they became part of that team, but they would also offer counseling behavioral goals, and they also work with interventionists if need be. Group counseling, our lunch bunches as we call it, is happening on a regular basis. And then of course, one of the bigger pieces with our RTI program is the behavior consultations, the observations. Just again today, I know this particular counselor and actually go do several observations on one particular student over the next few weeks. So we can gather information and reports on that. Also, their 504 casework. 504, if you're not familiar with that, is similar to a special education process where students who have been identified with a disability wind up getting a report that's written, we do the testing, the paperwork that follows our state and federal mandates that behind us. And I pursue that, our guidance counselors will be familiar with that. My complete honest opinion, again, we moved into the homeschool or homeless liaison at the end there as well. Working with speech and OT as part of our intervention team. It's an invaluable part of our school. And, for such a small amount of money, in my opinion, with the balance in the budget, we get a huge bang for that dollar. Move for full-time, I think, is a priority for us.
When you say that guidance counselor actually goes into the classroom and teaches lessons, can you give me an example of what a lesson would be that a guidance counselor is teaching?
Sure. In K-4 in particular, they work on a program called Zones of Regulation, which is a procedure, a program where students learn to recognize their own emotional behavior and well-being. So they'll teach the younger students what zone you're in. I'm in the red zone, the yellow zone, the blue zone, the green zone. And students begin to recognize what emotions and their emotional health coincide with that, what kind of decisions are they making.
Sounds like something I could use.
We might add another position.
Can I come?
They do a lot of goal setting as well. One of the things we've seen over the years, particularly with our guidance counselors, is that when students set goals, they achieve greater things. And there's actually, we've talked about studies where students who even have simple posters of colleges in their room at home tend to complete college, not just go complete it. So again, goal setting, I think, is an important piece for our students to know we begin early on.
Can I say one quick thing too about that? I mean, one of the things that we've been looking at the board level and that you folks bring forward to us and talk about a lot is the fact that some of the skills, I mean, yes, you go and you learn about reading and writing and you have those skills, but the kids that are most successful in college and in the workplace, they can develop relationships, they can speak on their own behalf, they're not, they know how to work with people and not be, hostile and so forth, and they can plan their time, and these are the kinds of lessons you're speaking about that the guidance counselors can deliver. How to plan your time, how to organize your work, how to be an advocate for yourself when you have to go and ask a question. I mean, how many of us remember being even in high school and being afraid to go and ask the teacher something? But if you can go up there and be confident about your request, it really helps you throughout. So these are some of the skills that you're trying to develop.
Absolutely. This is a whole child approach to education, which Nottingham does very well. We're also seeing the state move in that direction. We're actually going to we need to be by law assessing based on competencies. The state is providing us with competencies. There are academic competencies, and then there are also what they call work habits, along with
It takes a special person and not just a regular classroom person to be able to teach that.
Oh, it takes a very special person to be a guidance counselor, absolutely. And frankly, we've been very fortunate now, you have two outstanding guidance counselors.
And fully utilizing them, I might add, so they're not just waiting for people, for customers, they're getting out there and they're identifying issues and they're working with kids and they're teaching.
I have
So-
emailed this particular guidance counselor 3 times tonight before the meeting. And she responded each time. My guidance counselors are working, doing a great job.
Anything else on page 9?
Just to jump in, and not to advocate, but if you wanna go to the American School Counselors Association website, you can see the restructuring and the counseling role on that website as very different from when we were in school. You'll see that they outline percentages, 40% classroom instruction, 40% system support, 20% this. And it really defines what the school counselor's role is in this day and age. I know that it's significantly changed, since we were all in school.
American School of Guidance
Okay,
Counselors?
American School Counseling, yes, good. School Counseling Association, ASCA.
Ascot.
Mr. Kadomsky, I wonder if I could ask a quick question. Do other districts that you're familiar with, utilize the use of like special ed secretaries? I know there's a lot of paperwork involved with casework, and sometimes maybe you could have secretarial support, and then you're utilizing more of your special ed teachers and your pairs in the classroom, eliminating some of that paperwork for them. Is that something that gets used at all? Is it always done directly by?
Well, I think that, I'll leave that to Scott, because he's our special ed director and working with all of our staff, so I'd ask him to.
So you're asking about the clerical work of the case
Yeah, there's so,
manager?
exactly, and you're often adding a lot of paraprofessionals or special ed teachers, when I wonder sometimes some of their they could be in the classroom more if they had more
Well,
support.
paraprofessionals generally don't do clerical work.
Correct, special ed more.
Writing an IEP and performing assessments is a pretty
Needs to be
technical
done,
skill that I don't
correct.
think would lead to a clerical person. I could tell you that the way you have your clerical, and actually all 3 districts and other districts that I've worked in, your clerical staff is key in, you have a private special ed IEP writing system that directly links to your New Hampshire Medicaid to schools billing system. That's why we do that, because it maximizes your reimbursements in Medicaid. Right, so there's a lot of data entry that needs to be done. That's primarily what we use our special ed secretaries for, is scheduling meetings, getting in touch with parents, making sure the information's in the Medicaid system to maximize billing, collecting the billing sheets, all clerical duties. I can't see that it would be appropriate to have a clerical person pick up, for instance, writing an IEP when it has such specific legal components that need to
No,
be.
I was thinking more along the lines of special ed secretary. Do you utilize those?
Yeah, you have one.
You
Yeah.
do. In our we have one in our
You
building.
do, you do. You have one in your building, Northwood has one, Stratford has one, and I have one. So, and there's a lot of paperwork.
Oh, that's what I was wondering, there's a lot.
She's so busy, she's humble.
I didn't know we had one, so that's why I was asking if
She's
some
there.
of that workload.
And she's very nice too. Yeah, she does a
I'll have
nice
to
job.
hold her. Thank you.
You're welcome.
On page 10, you're moving into your nurse and your health supplies.
Excuse me,
Yes.
page 9 starts the health,
Yep,
and the nurse has evidently filed her intent to retire.
there was a retirement piece in there that we took out.
But it still includes some retirement.
See,
So-
we've got, sorry.
Go ahead.
We've got a retirement clause in the collective bargaining agreement, and then there is a one-time early retirement piece as well. The one-time early retirement was the one that was in there that came out, and the retirement clause that's in the CBA is still budgeted for. Is that correct?
Correct.
So where the 10K go to that's part of the deal?
What's that?
Contractual deal was a $10,000,
The-
20.
20 each?
But that's not going to be in this budget. It's gonna be in the 17-18.
17, 18.
Right. That's why that 20,000
But in the
is out.
16-17, we're reimbursing them for any unused sick time, and then there's a separate retirement severance in regards to their longevity
So
that
has
they're
to-
allowed to take.
They're not gonna retire until 17, 18. Is that?
No,
I'm
they're retiring in 16-17.
Okay, this
but-
budget,
Yes, they're retiring at the end of this year.
yes.
So on 6/30, we're paying them out for their reimbursement of unused sick time
Yep.
and their longevity payment that goes along with their other portion of their severance. And then in the new collective bargaining agreement, there is a one-time payment of $20,000 for early retirement, and we have 120 days to pay that. So we're putting that into the next budget for the 17-18.
We wanted that to be matching, to have an offset, so when you're losing a teacher that's at the high end of the scale, you're gonna have a replacement that's probably in the middle of the scale, and that's, you wanna see that balance. So we didn't wanna have the costs hitting us all in one period.
Right, so if you budget for it in the 17-18, you're paying it out when you're realizing the savings at the same time.
Right.
The other,
And there were three people, I believe, one being the nurse and 2 teachers.
There were 4 actually.
4.
1 nurse and 3 teachers.
And have the teachers filed to retire?
They have done the same thing. So $60,000 came out of the regular education line from when I originally prepared the budget.
They still have the opportunity until April to take back their retirement, correct? Or have they,
Not with this early
not,
retirement.
so they can no longer do that?
They can no longer
They put it in, it stays in.
So the 60 for the 3 teachers will hit in the 17, 18 budget also?
The 20,000 you're speaking of?
20,000
I'm
per.
gonna let
Correct.
Marjorie,
Correct.
but that's my
So in
understanding.
total, we should see 80,000 in retirement, per the contract.
With FICA and retirement, it came out, I wanna say, to about $98,000, so almost $100,000. But like Ms.
You-
Levinson had said earlier, you'll be seeing the offset of that with your other teachers
Lower
coming
salary.
in. So hopefully it's gonna meet in the middle, so hopefully you're not gonna see $100,000 increase,
Increase.
hopefully you're gonna see more of like a 50.
So if you have a step 12
Or,
and hire a step
you know,
5.
Should be pretty,
our
we're hoping
salary's
for a
lower.
wash, really, I think.
Right,
Okay.
but I'm just saying worst case scenario.
So,
And again, when you do something like that, let's just take round numbers, 60,000 and 40,000. Somebody goes out at 60, they come in at 40, you've got a wash for that year, no savings, but every year thereafter, you're realizing that $20,000 savings with an early retirement piece. Simple numbers,
so
but,
those 4 then are gonna hit not this budget except for sick days and unused, whatever.
right, that's budgeted.
That's budgeted and that'll occur this budget year, this
Correct.
16-17 budget year.
Correct.
The big payment, the big nut will be in the 17-18 budget and will be offset by the hiring of a lesser salaried teacher.
Correct,
I got that right?
correct.
Yes. And just to clarify, because I think there was some misunderstanding last year, and it was unfortunate for some of our teachers, these are contractual obligations that they have to, by a certain date, state that they may retire, and they have another certain date to indicate that they will not retire. So it's not unusual or unsavory. This is what is contractually required of our teachers.
Correct.
Thank you.
Except that you just mentioned that there's no takesies backsies once you declare.
For this.
Down,
Yeah.
just the early
the
retirement.
early.
The early retirement.
Yeah.
Retirement.
That's
You have to
something
meet
separate than if
several
they.
criteria to be eligible for it.
This is a separate clause in the contract, so by December of next year, once they say they're gonna retire, they have to retire.
That's that one-time early retirement buyout.
Right, to be eligible for that, they have to give a longer
And
read.
that would give us time to advertise and hire.
right, moving on to page 10, again, your health, your nurse. Any specific questions on that page? At the bottom of that page, moving into contract services speech, and, anything on speech, Scott? 11 and 12, bottom of 11.
Actually, I'd like to kinda go back to PT.
Yep.
So you're gonna see me as this process goes on, probably adjusting the physical therapy lines here and there. Again, I'm working on billable hours, and I just got the bill for September, October, and November, and we're trying to reconcile that. We have a meeting with Stratford Learning Center next week, so I may be coming back to you to reduce that, but what I have to do is budget off the purchase services agreement for now. And I'm hoping they come back with better news, at the next time, as soon as that reconciliation's over, then we can project out the year. Other than that, minor increases in OT, and we put a 3% marker in for the behavior technician, just because we don't know what we're going to get for a contract proposal from Constellation. And then we go down to speech. Looks like your salaries are up probably because of, definitely because of the collective bargaining agreement, and then you had a change in, life status. So it all comes out to about a $6,000 increase.
Scott, what is a behavior technician?
Behavior technician is, I think we've had a discussion about this last year. I had a student with significant needs who I was going to, potentially have to place out of district for a significant amount of money, and I contracted with Constellation's Behavior Services to, get a BCBT, which is a board certified behavior technician, and reduce the paraprofessional line in correspondence, because they couldn't, provide that service. And then they're supervised by BCBA, which I paid for out of federal funds. And so that's money well spent. It actually saves the district money, spending that money. And more importantly, the student is doing very well. So it was money well spent, and there may be,
It was a strategy to take care of the behavior.
strategy to take care of the student, to keep him in this neighborhood school, and to not spend a significant amount of money on an out-of-district placement. So, I mean, you see an increase there. You saw a decrease in paras in that year, and then you saw a decrease in your out-of-district line. So I think we're definitely doing right by the child, and I believe right by the district.
And so this is to kind of continue that?
You know, as time goes on and independence is warranted, there may be some adjustments there. And there's different, I don't want to say constellations, because that's the name of the company, but there's different, service constellations that we may be able to use in the future. One of the things that we're doing right now is using Constellation's behavior services to start to do some more specific training with the paraprofessionals. They begun that, right? Yes, they began that. And then we're building that internal capacity, so we don't have to go outside for a hefty expense. So we've contracted with them, and they're gonna continue doing that. Chris has taken that out of some of his PD money, and I also have some federal funds that I can brace that with as it goes on. But the goal is to really work with our paraprofessionals and special education case managers and build that capacity to serve really behaviorally impacted students.
Okay, thank you. Good job.
On page 12, I'm gonna talk about page 12 and 13 virtually at the same time, because I wanna point a couple of things out. On page 12, you'll see course tuition reimbursement, that's a contractual obligation, as well as on page 13, staff development workshops, that's a contractual obligation. The other pieces on here, I'm gonna ask Chris just to speak a little bit to them. These support all of your curriculum development, your staff development, in-service training, preparation for teachers, preparation in new programs, all of those lines that are ongoing services for teachers and trainings for teachers so they can keep up on our new programs and things that we're adding to the district. But it's always a give and take when we come into the budget on trying to be fiscally responsible and still provide the teachers with the tools that they need. So, Chris, can you just speak a little bit about curriculum development and in-service training?
Sure, and again, referencing the budget driver page, the original overview that I gave you last time, I mentioned these in there, they were number 2, as far as improvement of instruction, and there's 2 accounts associated with that. One is on page 12, and that is the curriculum development, the first one under improvement of instruction, that's 5112000. That's now budgeted at $14,500. Originally, we had that in the 20s, and we cut that back. That money has been used to fund teachers working over the summer on their own time to develop curriculum uses. That is incredibly vital for us. Staff members don't have time during the school year to write new curriculum. We maintain, we diagnose, we assess, and we teach. And for us to develop new curriculum, whole scale, we need time. That time, the best time to do that is in the summer. We have some, we've been able to use some grant funds in the past, but when we built the new math program, this line was put in place to support the trainings we needed to teach the teachers to teach the math. Last year, we not only utilized every bit of that, but we actually used more and had to go out and find other areas. We had teachers chomping at the bit to come in and look at new units, align them with best practices, including the New Hampshire standards and assessment pieces. It's money well spent, and it is well for our staff to do this. And quite frankly, the money we give them is a fraction of the money that they would be getting if we paid them for every hour of the they work. What happens is we'll ask teachers for input. They have to actually fill out a form and asking to apply for this funds. It has to be related to our building goals, the curriculum that we have. We sit around as an administrative table, our curriculum director, myself, and Ms. Dad, the assistant principal, and look at what places fit in, and then how we can divide it up. And the general consensus by the staff was, give us anything, we like everyone to be able to work. And so we've been able to give everyone a little bit of the pie. And so they may come in for 3 hours, which we pay them for, and then they wind up working 6 because they don't want to stop because they're just doing a great job and they're dedicated. So it's a nice way to say thank you for the work. It's a good motivation to get them in the door, and the outcome has been tremendous. We had 30 teachers over last summer working on curriculum technology and instruction pieces. That's the first part, and it is a bit of a hit to go from 19.5 down to 14.5 for that. But again, when we look at balancing the budget out, that was just an area we thought we could reduce a little bit, still keep something there to have. We think that's important to keep in there, particularly if we want to get a new reading program, because we're going to need funds for training the new program. The next page, page 13, the second line down is in-service training. That one we reduced dramatically. And again, when the new math curriculum was put in place a few years ago, we brought in trainers to work with our teachers. And we've been able to still continue to do that. If you look at the actuals, we spent down quite a bit of the money every time. And including last year's, even though we had a budget freeze. So a good portion of the year last year, we couldn't use these funds, and we still spent a substantial amount. This is some of the funds that we utilize, as Scott had mentioned earlier, about some of the trainings to improve the skills of our staff, which eventually have offices and other lines. We will use this, we're using it now for some other trainings around reading coming in. This is, we had Allison Malika, who is a internationally known Google trainer, come and work with us and our teachers. Every single one of our teachers now, because of her work, our school has a web page that'll be up and running in the next few weeks. Again, all this, all of those trainers come out of this funds here. So we reduced that dramatically to $5,000. I don't know how that will pan out next year, but again, this budget is a mix of what we need, what we want, and the tough choices of that we have to put in place. This was an area that we reduced by $15,000.
Thank you. And at the bottom of 13, you'll see your curriculum director, high school liaison. What a wonderful addition to your building that was. It's great strides, not only in curriculum, but also the information and the data and the communication between Dover High School and Co-Brown Northwood Academy and Nottingham School. It's been a wonderful addition. You'll see that at the bottom of page 13 and also on page 14. And then at the bottom of 14, moving into your library media, there's a slight decrease in salary there. That was a staffing change. Anything on 14?
What was the staffing change?
We had one person leave and a new staff member come in. Page 15, is going down, continuing in your library. Again, looking down through those lines, there really are no huge changes there, minor adjustments along the way. Questions on 15? Page 16, moving into technology. Adjustments there, 19,000 in new equipment. Chris, anything you want to add on page 16 with technology?
Sure, yeah, we had, again, 5 budget drivers, we created the budget. One of them was technology, it was the first one on the overview. And, we originally came in at $24,541. We reduced that by $5,000. I'll explain the money we have budgeted is 19,541, that's for. As per our tech plan, we've been developing and moving towards bringing new technologies for students to become college and career ready. Part of that has been a growing reliance on Google technology, Google Chromebooks. What it does is to allow our students to collaborate and interact in ways they've never done before. The technology, and it will be highlighted by school report next Wednesday, has resulted in major successes for our students. We still have a ways to go, but we just won another award for some of our 7th grade science students who will be working with this printing science to utilize all online and collaborate with college professors from around the country. And we recognize as 2 of our teams as being the best gold stars through that process. Technology is key to what we do from now on move forward. It's no longer an added thing that we add in. It's becoming the platform that we teach from. Our teachers are well trained. I mentioned Allison Malcolm, who came in the 2nd year in a row, has worked with our staff so that they're becoming familiar with the platform Google Classroom, which is a virtual classroom. And you see that being utilized in many, many colleges across the country. Similar online forums where students actually at home now can log on and watch videos, reply. It's kind of a blended learning is a term we utilize now, where we're mixing some of the instructional practices that we have outside the classroom. Technology makes that possible. Our tech plan has us moving towards a one-to-one program, so identifying what that looks like. At this point in time, we are adding more Chromebooks, which are inexpensive laptops that use a Chrome OS, an internet-based OS or operating system. And so this money is to have 2 new cards come in. That'll bring us up to about a 2.5 to 1 ratio of students to Chromebooks. And our goal eventually again is to figure out one-to-one what that might look like for our school. K-8 is driving mediums. Kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, we're not sure what that looks like, probably on Chromebooks. Which led to the $5,000 cuts, because originally we had an additional $5,000 in there to pilot a tablet program, looking at Google Android-based tablets. We have some tablets in the building now that we're using. Students are making videos out of them and using for a variety of other resources to our arts program. And we see great possibilities for the ability to use some smaller tablets with our students, particularly the younger kids who aren't type ready, that aren't word processing. And the tablets bring a whole lot of connectivity as well. That's been taken out of the budget, but we do see that coming down the pike still. Our technology committee is still trying to wrap its mind around where we will head to as one-to-one business. So I think this shows that we have modest growth, but I don't think it's extraordinary.
It looks like underneath the software, you booked out the cost for each of these services, which is great. Thank you for doing that. It looks like, so you cut out the Discovery Ed Stream Plus plan?
Yeah.
What is that?
The Discovery Ed program was it was a software that cut across a variety of the disciplines, and mostly it was around current events and some science software resources for the teachers. But again, we had to make some decisions, and we looked at other offsetting software that we can utilize. We're still in the process of understanding what type of software we can use in the building. Currently, the teachers are out there per grade typically finding what software works with their curriculum. And we have a technology integration specialist now, surveying them to say, hey, what are you doing? What are you using? How's it working for you? And then maybe our goal for the following year is to streamline this, have less software. You see it, and there's a reduction in our workbooks and some of the other books that we utilize, and there's an increase in the software, and that's a natural shift as we go to more online resources. The next step now is look at the software we have and look at are there free online resources, and there are several. We just want to make sure that it's up to par. Sometimes you get what you pay for. So that was just one of them again that we said, you know, it would be great to have, but I think we can look for other resources.
We're moving on to page 17, you've got your Director of Technology, all the corresponding benefits. Bottom of page 17, starting on your school board services. On page 18, school board services continuing. You'll see that we've got a slight increase in attorney and negotiator. We took $10,000 off that line and tried to, again, that's a moving target, and we tried to do the best we can with being responsible in that line. And then the expenses, SAU about 3/4 of the way down, that's now an actual number on what that's gonna be. Any questions on 18? On page 19, moving, at bottom of 18, 19, moving into Office of the Principal. Again, looking down through there, there's not a whole lot of changes in your budget. You obviously are realizing a savings in health insurance. Any other questions on page 19?
Page 18, the printing school district report. What is the school district report at $3,000?
Where are you, Gene?
About halfway down, it's ends in 555,000. Printing school district report at, if you go way to the right, it says percentage change.
That's our annual report
The annual report.
for the school district.
Where do I read that? No, the report, where does it go? How is it published? I don't understand. Is it part of the town report, or is that,
It has been.
is this a new line item then?
This is, I believe the school board is going to be producing their own annual report this year.
This year?
Yep.
This line's always been there.
It's always been in there as our portion of the annual report.
Oh, I see. But it won't be part of the town report this year, it'll be a separate report.
Yeah, we've talked about that a few times.
Just verifying that my memory is.
The difference is
Memory is great.
$2,400.
Thank you for going back.
Any other questions on 18 or 19?
19, you had on the previous version, we've got the November 10th one. There was a salary pool administrators. And so they moved 3% increases to the lines to account for that. It looks like everything's the same. Was that put into a different, the numbers as far as salaries were all the same as they were before. Was that put into a different, referencing 2410-5115-007?
Yep. The 73, on that particular line, the 73903 should be the existing contract. And the next line is a corresponding 3% increase.
Is that on page 18?
Page 19 at the
Or
top.
19?
They're all,
But page 18, the same.
yeah,
Oh,
the
I
same
got you, I got
thing.
you.
Same
It's-
The same, the same
Right.
thing. Any other questions there? Continuing office of the principal on page 20. speak to the contracted services telephone? 5999. We've got an increase there of $4,600.
Actually, that was a contract also. Right here.
The Conway office printer. So that was the increase with that.
That's a new contract that was brokered, I know the SAU, the SAU brokered the contract,
Yeah.
I'm not sure with other buildings as well. This is a company that replaces all of our, and reuses our ink cartridges, all of our copier needs that come in, so we're in the past, but we would have to repurchase those, we get a much lower rate now, because we need to reduce our services. Where we get lower lease prices as well, lower paper costs for copying and for copying.
Maybe not later.
Not even checkable lease.
So no overages charged on this, and you'll see offsetting according to the notes
Right.
in the tech lines.
Any other questions on 20? Bottom of 20 and into 21, the bookkeeper, you'll remember that we centralized those services to the SAU, with the corresponding decrease there. Also on 21, looking at operation of the plant, there's an increase, have a half-time custodian, and the corresponding benefits underneath that. Questions on 21?
Amos Health Insurance took it's all health insurance. It's 24% increase of.
That's because there's an additional half-time position there, Gene.
I see.
There was a decrease in your overall health insurance, but on that particular line, you're seeing an increase because there's a half-time.
Additional person or a half person.
Right, right. On page 22, continuing your maintenance of the plant. Looking down through, slight increase on lawn care, that's because of the contract increase. A few decreases, trying to tighten up certain things there. Any questions on 22? Page 23, you've got some increases in custodial supplies, obviously price increases, same with electricity. You'll see a decrease in propane. We have done RFPs and bids, so we can get prices on propane. So we're now locked into that propane price, which is cheaper than what we had budgeted for next year. Obviously, I wish I had a crystal ball to see whether it was actually gonna go up or down, but it is lower than we had budgeted, so we've locked in for next year at that amount, so there was a cost savings there.
It's pretty substantial,
Absolutely.
Right. It's, you know, I wish I could tell you whether it was gonna go down some more or not, but at least there's a savings in there. Any other questions on 23?
So you were able to contract that far out?
Yeah, we're locked in. They allow us to commit to X number of gallons. We don't pay for it now, but we lock in now and then pay for it as we use it at that contracted rate.
I got a question on page 23, your electricity costs. I remember a couple of years back, you were going through the school, putting in new efficient light fixtures and all that. The expectation being the costs were gonna go down, but from 13-14 to 14-15, your costs have actually gone up almost 20%. What happened there?
Your supply rates.
That's all purely supply rates?
That's my assumption, but
And you can see from 14-15 to 16-17, where I think that's where you're seeing the usage that's better, but again, your supply rates, we can't control those.
Yeah,
Have you guys contracted with one of the third-party suppliers? Who's taking a scrape from? We did that at the town, we saved quite a bit, actually.
we can check into them, Mark.
You might even get a $50 gift card off it too.
Oh, there we go.
Then next year we'll
Snacks and a counselor, and I'd be all set.
Anything else on 23? Page 24, you've got your transportation contracts. That's about all that's on page 24. Yep.
If you look at 0/1/2700/5519061, special education, you can see your downtrend going from left to right, from 203 to up to 217, down to 180. Now you're down to 94. That's because your special ed transportation use is down both in district and out of district. And if you look down at the high school line, you can see that there's a slight uptick, but overall, you've got some good savings going on there. I don't want the budget committee to make assumptions that just because that out-of-district placements are gonna line up with your transportation numbers, because sometimes we transport students in district or from other districts back to Nottingham, depending on some difficult situations, so, you can see them in your, if you compare the special ed out-of-district placements to the transportation grid right behind it, you can see that there's more special ed transportation than there actually is out-of-district placements in that.
Is the transportation subcommittee still active?
Yeah, the transportation committee, I gotta put a plug in for them. They're doing a wonderful job, and they have been doing a wonderful job, looking at your transportation contracts, having discussions with Dale Transportation. Are there different routes? Can we condense routes? Can we use, a bus and a half instead of 2 buses and try to piggyback some of the routes? They're still active and still doing a terrific job.
Thank you, Jackie.
What's the reason for the, increase for the transportation for Dover? The 11,889? Do we add another bus route? Why is it such a substantial?
I believe that was just a change in contracted cost, and that was one of the areas that the Transportation Committee is presently looking at to see if there's a way to go from 3 buses to 2.5 or 2 buses. The dilemma, as you probably know, in a rural area, is not necessarily the number of kids that you have on the bus, but the length of time that the kids are on the bus.
Right.
So if you subtract a bus, physically, you can fit that many kids on the bus, but then they may be, because they have to, drive a longer route, maybe on the bus for an hour, hour and a half, which is unreasonable. So that's the balancing act that, quite frankly, the Transportation Committee has spent a lot of time on, and is still looking into those things on, is there a way that we can reduce the number of buses and still not have children on the bus for, an hour plus?
I have another answer for that too.
A better one?
I do, I do actually. So, going back to our budget line transfer, our budget adjustment entries that I make throughout the year, with the changes that the Transportation Committee had made with the contract that we have, so the Dover figure has changed. And that amount is actually over budget right now by $7,425. I have a budget transfer going before the school board next week to approve that transfer. So when you see it next time, it will not be such an increase because that transfer will have been made, so.
Very nice.
It will only be like a $4,000 increase, not 11,000.
But really, the school board also has to, the Transportation Committee has done a phenomenal job. They worked on the negotiation of the new contract with Dale. They worked on the RFP, pulling the RFP together to get get, some responses, only Dale responded though. But from a board perspective as well, as Dr. Godomsky said, we have to really consider, we didn't wanna make changes at the beginning of the year. You know, you don't wanna find out 1 or 2 weeks before your kid's going to school that there's a big change or change in buses or what have you. So, we're trying to balance all the moving pieces of this, but it is hard to go from one end of this town to the other, and then 35 to 40 minutes to Dover or wherever, and not have these kids on the bus a really long time, so.
Yeah, the other piece there real quick, and I'll make it short, is the unintended consequence of super line bus rides. You should probably see your special education transportation expenses go up, because you've got kids with sensory, issues and other issues that, don't respond well to a significant one, which could be really long bus ride.
That's for sure.
I don't respond well to a
I
long
don't
bus
think I
ride
either.
either.
That's why my kids ride the
Especially in
bus
the
home,
winter.
but not the bus to school. Right, it's 45 minutes to, it's 3 minutes home.
Reverse the.
Chromebooks, right here.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Anything else on 24? 25 is just kind of wrapping things up. 26 is your food service. 26 and 27. You'll see there are some minor adjustments there as we try to predict the actuals. And coming down to the end of your budget, which is up 2.4%.
Go back to food services.
Yep.
There are new dictates coming down from the federal government for the type of food and balanced budget, food thing. Chris, you aware of anything that's gonna impact this?
There's always things coming down from federal and state budgets, but frankly, there is a new one from the state. So there's a, remember the state house, education committee is actually a foreign food service provider, so there's always something along this line. Nothing substantial so far. We just had our food audit last year by the state, and so we've really tightened everything up that we do. We should be looking pretty good. We did reduce our food and milk line substantially, which is, I think we're pretty much there. I don't know how much wiggle room we have in that line, based on some of the actions we've had in the past. But we did take a close look, Marjorie, and we really looked at the last number of years what we actually spent, and, $12,000 reduction in that line, and trying to bring that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we want to cut in $207,000 just from our operating budget, to move forward with this number. So a lot of thought went into from the last time you saw us. How we can be responsible.
It's about 80,000 less.
We
I've
did
gotta
question
tell
the
you-
food and milk line, we were very sensitive to that, we questioned it at the board level, but we all feel comfortable that that's totally acceptable and fine.
I've got to tell you, the building administration, we had some very difficult conversations with the budget on, and we talked a little bit about the preparation of the teachers and the books and what do we do with those, and the technology, we didn't want to lose ground, and making sure that your operation of the plan is well supported, so you're not going backwards on facilities. So, Jen and Jude and Chris certainly have had some wonderful conversations, though difficult conversations, to get to this point.
So in the first budget, you were looking at about a $238,000 increase. And that included the $100,000 for the textbooks. And now you're looking at a $268,000 increase that does not include the $100,000 for textbooks.
Well,
Right.
what we said last time was there were a number of places in here that needed to be adjusted, your tuition lines, and other areas. So we knew that what we gave you last time, and we expressed that there were some adjustments that needed to be made. So, this is a much cleaner, much tighter budget.
You had you had the increase on you had a couple of contractual things in the last budget that weren't underestimated, they weren't estimated at all, they were just placeholders from last year.
The
For
SAU,
instance,
the preschool.
Dover came in at 6%, plus over 6% increase in gas.
All of them were tightened up. The tuition contract for Dover for the special education piece, you know, there were a lot of pieces that we needed to tighten up. So like I said, this is a pretty good tight budget right now.
So the bottom line number on the 1 year prior revised, that's your, where you're making your adjustments and whatnot. That should stay consistent.
Right.
In the first budget go around, it was 11,062,492. This one, it's 11,059,637.
I'll take a look at that and reconcile it with the reports of the state.
That's what I'll be looking for is, or I think what we all should look for is that bottom line number is exactly what was approved by the state.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Are you guys working off of the default budget for this year?
Yes.
Right. So should that number then be the same as the default budget number that you're gonna go through with us as far as the current budget that you're working on?
The default budget that's in this package is for what we put together for next year.
Right, but you got a July 2015 to June 2016, and then before that you got, oh, that's, okay, you're comparing, I'll wait until you get through.
Well, default would be anything that's part of the CBA for increases and any contractual obligations, and that's it, right?
Less one-time expenses.
Right.
Correct, so the changes that we've made in the default are pretty much the locked-in oil prices that we did, the changes to the SAU, the changes to the preschool, changes to tuition, anything like that, that we've adjusted. What we told you tonight has also been adjusted in the default accordingly.
So, okay, so my question is valid then, but on this default budget, the bottom line number you're showing for the expenditure cycle that we're in right now is 11,010,114. Is that not the budget that you're supposed to be working on off of for this year?
So the current fiscal year, in other words, the end of June of 16.
Right now, but I'm looking for that number to match whatever this bottom line number is for 1 year prior revised.
Right?
Based
It
on
should be the
the-
same thing.
yeah.
The same thing.
Based
right?
on the warrant that we had, the default
Right.
was 11,10,114.
Then that's what's here.
Yep.
Okay,
So that was your default budget.
that's the default budget.
And then you have to add in any warrant articles that were approved at the same time, so you have your teacher warrant articles,
Okay.
so that needs to be added in.
And those warrant articles equated to somewhere around $30,000.
I
Well,
don't
I'd have to
remember off the
check.
top
I'd have
of
to
my
check.
head, Mark, I'm
But it is
sorry.
your default plus any warrants, so.
It would be good just to, when you go through this, just to match that, and maybe next time you can come back and show us how that all.
I'm just trying to clarify your question.
good
You're
point.
looking at the proposed default budget or the one that we've actually
No, I'm
created?
looking at the one that we're under right now.
Okay.
Right.
And the reason, Sue, is,
Say that this number here
Yep,
should.
No, I see what you're saying.
Should actually default.
should be
This
the default,
number.
yep.
Right.
Yeah, it gets trouble, I almost think that it'd be nice to have just a column that shows the actual budget
Yeah.
that we're working under with no,
no movement.
adjustments to it, to say, hey, you know, we
That's
thought
your-
we'd spend $5,000 on books, but instead we spent $3,000, so we used 1,000 of it on paper towels, right? But you wanna really know, we wanna really know what tracked on that line, how we used it.
And the difference is when, well, that's more of a traditional way of doing it.
Yeah.
And when you see the town budget, when we show you a budget increase or decrease, it's off of the budget from last year, not off of the actuals.
Right.
Right, and you're doing a budget difference off of projected actuals because you're moving numbers around.
It's kind of a hybrid, it's the actual budget, but there are transfers within it.
Yeah, so it's kind
So
of.
it's hard to track a line
You can't really.
there, cause there's multi-use on a line.
Change, you're always, every time we meet, you adjust them.
Cause we have talked about that a little bit, and, you know,
And that's why the default budget, that's why I left that one as is, because that is the default budget.
Yeah.
And I did not, if The warrant articles, when I add those into the system that we use, that's when it gets called the revised column. So I left that one out on purpose. To see this is what we're working off of as the default. We can add the warrant article in, but if I add that column to the revised, you're gonna get the warrant article plus all the changes that we've made throughout the year. I can't single it out.
You could, one thing, I mean, we could talk about this at the next board meeting, but we could do something like a column of budget. Here's the budget we're working on, what was approved, the 11 million change there. And then another column of actuals, and then you could see differences in those lines. We can talk it through, but
It actually would probably generate some interesting additional conversation inside the board, you know, as you went through the years.
and we kinda get a feel for what we're doing, cause you see those line item adjustments, they have to come through, but we don't see everyone, but. And it's kind of like when Chris Sterndale was talking about it, it's kinda, you'd almost have to cobble something together to try to figure out the line item adjustments even on that side, so it's an interesting area.
A significant difference, Mark, between town and school is the, yeah, we're halfway through the school year, and we're almost completely through the town
I
year.
was gonna throw that in there.
So it's quite, quite appropriate for the school to keep a running tally on what's actual for their
Okay.
budget
It's
lines.
good practice to actually have a tally of what's happening, you know, all that movement.
Any other questions?
I don't. Okay, do you wanna do the default, I don't know, we need to go through that, it's the same thing except for the contractual obligations.
Yeah,
Do you wanna
it's-
go through the default budget as well, or? Anybody else? No, okay. Okay, while we're still in the school, do you wanna do the financial review? I mean, or is it more just to look over of what's left? Any major changes or anything on that, but as far as
The monthly financial report that you have, is that what you're,
Correct.
okay, you wanna go over that?
Sure. This is the monthly financial report that was given out to the school board last month in November. So basically, when you're looking at this one, this goes hand in hand with the budget, so if you're looking at that first page, you can see this is the original appropriation, then you have the amendments, which we have changed, and then that gives you the revised budget.
So, yeah, you can see, when we see
you
it every
looking
month,
for?
we can see it, so for us, it's not foreign, but when you see it on the budget, it's a little different.
Then you have your actual year-to-date, your encumbrances, and your balances. So because of staff changes that we had this year, you can see that there's a savings in the teacher salary line. Teacher substitute wages, there's $30,000 left in that line, obviously, because we're in the middle of the year. We expect to spend that money. And then further down, you have savings from your retirement, which go hand in hand with your savings and your teacher salary. And then you can see all the budget amendments going down. I don't know how far in detail you want me to go.
No, just
with
really
this
from a
report.
high level view, I mean, obviously, there's money left, just anything that stands out as maybe an encumbrance or something that cost that came up that you didn't anticipate. I mean, obviously you can move it within the lines and so forth, but anything that came out, I mean, that should be a quick review of this part of it. And then on to the SAU, but,
Okay,
well, I had in front of me at 30, just in case anybody had any questions or wanted to ask anything, you know.
okay. Page 2 starts with special education. The salaries have all been encumbered and accounted for. You'll see a slight savings in health insurance. You'll see that we are over in teacher of the deaf elementary. I'm assuming within,
That's why there's that corresponding
Yep.
increase in the operating budget.
and then you'll see the $40,000 savings so far in special ed non-public elementary. Page 3, you can see that there's a total, I see a spelling error.
Total specialty education.
Yep, total special education to be spent today is $73,000. Going further down the page into athletic, we're only 4 months into the school year, so there's still athletic salaries that we don't know who's gonna be fulfilling those duties, so those are not encumbered until we figure out who's going to do those. Moving on to page 4. Nurse's salary, that's where that $13,000 is for her, she had put in for retirement for this year and then redacted it. So now we have that $13,000 that's gonna remain there
Okay.
until the next year. I don't have anything else on page 4. Page 5, we had a change in health insurance, which is why that's showing an overage of almost $5,000. Going down to improvement of instruction, until somebody gives us the proper paperwork for course tuition reimbursement, we cannot encumber that amount of money, so that's why there's almost $10,000 left there. As well as your staff development workshops. Page 6 begins your curriculum director, and you can see that there's about $10,000 worth of savings right there. And moving down to librarian, there is a $10,000 savings there. And again, that was due to a change in staff. Page 7. For the most part, everything's encumbered as it should be, going down to the director of technology through his lines and through the school board salaries. And, I'm sorry, not salary, services. Page 8, you'll see so far, there's almost $12,000 savings in the school board services. And then we get into the office of the principals, where you will see a savings of the health insurance. And so far, there's $12,000 left in their course reimbursement line. Moving on to page 9, we get into the operation and maintenance of plant. I believe there were some staff changes in the assistant custodian salaries. And we are still going through some changes in that line. So that line will change. And then you see the savings in the health insurance. So page 10, so far we have $32,000 left in the operation and maintenance of plants. Then you get into transportation, where we have savings in special education transportation elementary of almost $68,000 right now. And then we get into the food service. And page 11, we have everything that we can encumber under the food service at this point, as well as the tuition, and then the high school special education costs. Page 12, you'll see right now we're currently looking at almost $600,000 that we haven't spent. But obviously that's gonna change throughout the year, because we're only halfway through.
Halfway through. Gotcha.
We just haven't gotten the door repair. Page 11, the $125,000 balance, special education out of Nottingham High School, because we haven't gotten the bills.
Right.
Yeah, you need documentation to encumber.
Are you encumbered for that?
No, it's sitting as a balance because I haven't gotten a bill or a PSA to encumber off of. So I don't know what the cost is gonna be. So I just wanted to go over that to,
Right.
that's why there's so much money sitting there, because I believe that.
Makes sense.
So, what goes into the amendments column?
The warrant article,
Okay,
and any changes that were made. So that's why if you look at, and there's my warrant article figure I was looking for that I told you I was gonna have to go back and look it up. It's at 52,380.
You said warrant article and any other changes. Where in
Those any other changes should offset each other.
offset.
Correct. So the only amount that it should increase by is that 52,380, because that was the warrant article that was passed.
So you're trying to put just to clarify a little bit, you've got line item adjustments that are going through there, and then if we go back to the actual warrants, you're putting in 52,000, which was putting it into the area in the budget since it was approved by
Correct.
the voters.
Any questions?
Is that clear? Does that make sense to everyone, what's happening there?
This is because the teacher contract was ratified as a separate warrant article.
Correct.
And there was, some tax or something.
You can see it in the sense.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll do it on out.
Yeah, it was
You threw all this.
warrant article 3 for fiscal year 15-16, the estimated increase was 52,380.
Any other questions on that? All right, the SCU budget.
The SAU budget, for FY '17 is coming through as a flat budget. There was no overall increase. I'll take you through quickly. On page 1, you'll see the way it's separated out with the revenue. And you'll also see on the first page all of our staff salaries. There's quite a bit of movement in the salary lines simply because we have had quite a bit of movement in our staff over the last year or so, moving people around to different positions and some people leaving and new hires. So you're gonna see some adjustments there. If you look on page 2 at the top, there is an increase in salary bookkeepers of $32,000. That was one of our adjustments for next year. If you remember in your budget a few years ago, you had a bookkeeper that was taken out when we went to centralized bookkeeping. When we did that, we had one bookkeeper in each of the district budgets, so that's 3 bookkeepers, and we had a bookkeeper at the SAU, so that's 4 bookkeepers. When we took them out of the local budgets, we reduced that and centralized everything, and we had it down to 2 bookkeepers. What we're finding is that the workload is too much. So what we're doing for next year, that's where that 32,000 comes in. We're adding another part-time bookkeeping position and hopefully downshifting some of the responsibilities from our business administrator to our finance manager, and from our finance manager to the 3 bookkeepers, the 2 3/4 bookkeepers that we're gonna have. Hopefully that'll help out with the workload and some of the efficiency things. So we were able to do that with some other adjustments and still keep the budget flat for next year.
A question for you, as far as the salaries go for each of the positions, I know with the CBA, of course, the teachers just have the step level, so each year they get a certain raise based on a percentage point that's negotiated. Does that also follow the same way with the SAU, or how is that all determined?
No, at the SAU, we put in a percentage, and for the staff, it's 3%. For the upcoming year, we have nothing budgeted for myself, and for Mr. Rooning and everybody else, we put in a 3% for next year.
Is that the salary pool increases line?
That would be under the salary pools, yes. And the way that's determined at the end of the year, we do evaluations at the end of the year, and it doesn't mean everybody gets a 3%, there's a 3% available. So then it's according to evaluations at the end of the year.
But Mark, for financial statement purposes, that 174% increase, that's only because we took some of the amounts that were in there and allocated them to the appropriate. Kind of like we were going with the Nottingham,
Hey, look,
okay?
I wasn't gonna ask the question. I just wanted to know that.
I just wanted to clarify.
I wasn't gonna ask the question.
That 3% salary pool, although it sounded like a really good idea at the time, has created more confusion.
Like we'll be forever explaining it.
It really has created confusion, so we're trying to streamline that a little
Like at
bit.
every meeting.
Going down on page 2, you'll see the health insurance savings. That's twofold. You'll see a health insurance savings, not only because our health insurance came in favorably at a minus 1.4%, but further down this page, you'll see health insurance buyouts that went up, and it actually is a net savings of approximately, what, $40,000 there, give or take. So that was one of the areas that we were able to demonstrate a savings, so we could explore the new bookkeeper and still come in at a static budget. The rest of page 2 and page 3 are your benefits. End of page 3, conferences, courses, workshops. Trying to look down, school board fees on page 4. Legal expenses have been, again, everything on page 4 is fairly static. You're gonna see that in the remainder of the budget, that everything else is fairly even. I mean, we've got some computer maintenance agreements that we went up on page 5, much necessary upgrades to our technology at the SAU, which has been ignored way too long. So we've put a little bit more money into that area. Page 6, office supplies business. Again, we're seeing a little bit of an increase there since we've centralized all of the office, the business functions.
Why are the retirement lines, why are they going down? Like the retirement superintendent, retirement sped director, assistant director?
Because the business administrator was under the impression that they were at the higher percentage rate that the teachers were, at
Okay.
15.67, and I recently found out that's not true, that they're at the 11.17. I thought because they were certified, because they both have their teaching degrees, that qualified them for the higher retirement rate.
Any other questions on page 6? On page 7, again, we've got some business subscriptions there that were changed slightly. Let's see. Rental of facilities, which we put in for a 4% increase there to cover that. Any other questions on 7?
I wanted to ask on health insurance. I want to take you all the way back.
Okay.
So that's a big drop, right? What's the reason for the big drop, and do you think it's sustainable, which you might not be able to answer?
I think there was some change in circumstances with plans and also the buyouts that you're seeing corresponding savings in.
Okay, so it's not that the cost of health insurance went down, or was that factored in?
That was a piece of it. That's factored in, because your overall cost of health insurance went down 1.4% down, decrease. So that's factored in as well. But you're also seeing a change in circumstances of the plans that were taken as well as the buyouts.
Remember too, we said that we've had a substantial amount of changing with so with those changes come, you also have people that took the insurance that now they're not to come in, they're not.
And again, we try to get that accurate annually if people have change in circumstances with their life and you know, whether they're on their spouse's health insurance or whatever, you know, that's adjusted to, and this year we've demonstrated some savings there.
The superintendent, the unemployment line, it looks like from 13, 14, 14, 15, and so forth, it's going kind of up and down, up and down. What kind of drives that on page 2? Is it insurance, or is it, where's the bottom? Line 2320-52600. Looks like 13, 14, and 16, and down to 6, and up to 18. There's kind of a big difference up and down. Sorry, line, page 2.
I think
You pay unemployment when you have a recently unemployed superintendent.
correct, but I think there's also kind of like a discount that we've kind of been getting that's applied to that,
Okay.
that we're not guaranteed every year. So I'm just trying to budget for it
Just in case.
financially, just to have it in case we don't get that anymore.
Gotcha.
But it's based on salary, it's based on your past unemployment rate. There's a lot of factors that come into play with it.
Gotcha.
Cause if you look at the 13, 14, it was almost up at $17,000.
Right.
And then moving through toward the end, again, some minor adjustments. We've got some, a little increase in furniture replacement, about $1,000, that is sorely needed in my office. Other than that, you know, we come to page 9, and like I said, our budget is flat from this present year.
Perfect. Any questions? Step-by-step preschool.
Yeah, Mark, you're gonna do the revenue.
Sure.
That way it doesn't
On the SAU budget, that doesn't come before the budget committee, the school boards vote on that.
The joint board votes on that.
Yeah, boards, yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's been,
When's that gonna happen?
it's been
Did that
approved.
tonight.
About now, 3 hours ago.
So
Just
scratch-
about dinner time.
Where were you?
Well, I don't know, this says proposed, so.
Yeah.
Scratch.
Well, this one had to say
Ratified.
proposed because it wasn't approved until 3 hours ago, and this went out.
Cross that out.
You can put adopted.
Perfect.
So Scott wants me to take the revenue section, so I will do that. I'm gonna leave the first 3, the Northwood, Nottingham, and Stratford appropriations out first to discuss how it works at the bottom. Yeah. So, preschool one-on-one reimbursement Northwood.
Oh, I'm not sure we have that.
You don't have it?
Operating budget, I've got the proposed budget for the step-by-step preschool.
The first 2/3 of the page is the
Revenue,
page.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry.
I was like, wait a
Full
second.
revenue right here.
Oh,
I see, I see.
We're on preschool.
yes.
Preschool,
Okay.
yeah.
Did you wanna go back to the SAU revenue?
No, I thought we were going to school revenue, but
Oh, okay.
that's okay.
No, that comes with the tax rate at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so if we just look at the preschool one-on-one reimbursements for Northwood, Nottingham, and Stratford, so halfway down that page. So currently Nottingham has a preschool one-on-one para. That is changing for next year, and we're going to have one para that is split between Northwood and Stratford. So those expenses, that revenue is being allocated to those 2 instead. And this is, that 2963 and the 2963 is coming off your bottom of your expenses because we have accounted for that expense down there, so those offset each other. Then you get into the preschool ESY summer program, Northwood, Nottingham, and Stratford, and those are allocated the same way. Those are, so all the expenses that I'm talking about are related to on page 5, where you have your preschool aides and then you have your summer school ESY. So if you look at the totals for those figures, those equal those. So I take that portion off of the amount that I'm going to allocate to the districts appropriately. Preschool tuition parents, the one above the preschool one-on-one revenue. I spoke with Scott about it, we have been receiving more revenue than what we have been budgeting for, so we had a conversation about that, so if you look at prior years, we've received 25,900, 26,670, and then our budget for this year was $20,000. Looking at what I expect to receive this year, I expect to receive more than that, so we upped that amount to $25,000 to take off of the individual allocations that you will be seeing in the lines that we're gonna go up to now. So, Scott, I'm gonna let you take that part over because you do the rolling average.
Right, so, different from how we allocate your SAU percentage based on the very simple formula the state uses. We use a 3-year rolling average for the preschool because it'll tend to even out your peaks and valleys based on your student enrollment. So every year I take out a spreadsheet and I remove the previous year and I stick in the next year, and that gives me a 3-year average of your enrollments. What's confusing is that your enrollments actually went down a little bit. You can see the percentages. Northwood is at 41, Nottingham is at 38, and Stratford is at 19.97. So those are your 3-year averages for this year. And if you look, you can see the corresponding revenues. So, let's go into your expenses. Are we ready for that?
Sure.
What is preschool ES1?
Extended school year service.
Extended school year.
So if we look at your expenses, your budget is up, and your budget is primarily up because of some changes in employment and some new hires. So you can see that at the bottom of page 1 when it comes to salaries. I mean, there's a 3% adjustment for the staff in there, but the significant cost that drove that up were the high-quality hires that we did for our teaching assistants for our aides. So you had one that came in significantly higher than the previous one that left, so that's why you see that increase there. There's not much you can really do about that. And then on page 2, if you look, there's corresponding benefit increases based on that, and based on a change in health insurance. And then as you go through, it's relatively either down or the same. On page 3, you'll see everything's level, with a reduction in the nurse consultant. If you go to page 4, you can see that there were some minor increases and decreases. Down the page, if you look at subscriptions, what happens is there's an online system called the Preschool Outcome Measurement System. And for years, I'm going to say, that wasn't maintained and it had exited students in it, so you're getting billed per student. When we discovered that last year, we went in and removed all those exited students. So that's why you see a reduction in that access fee to per student count. And everything else is pretty level through the budget or reduced. If you preschool aids is down for Nottingham.
Is this proposed or approved?
Adopted, that's adopted. We have an overall increase of $26,000, and generally that $26,000 is because of, not used specifically, but overall, it's because of hires and benefits. And then your share, went up about, I think, $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000.
So our share is the second line on the revenue.
Yeah.
And that that's paid out of the regular school
It's budgeted
budget.
in your other budget.
I just wanna make it clear to anybody that's watching or reading,
Yeah.
that don't know here, that the school administrative unit runs a step-by-step, if you will, budget-wise.
Right.
As well as the SAU budget, which this committee has no control over or input to.
Correct.
Any questions on that? Thank you. Very thorough, as always.
Thank you.
Well done your background research, appreciate that.
Again, if there's any questions or concerns, just let me know, and I'll be happy to take it back to the school.
So
one thing before they leave, everybody here, in addition to, you know, Jen Asdot and our curriculum director, Jude Chavat, and all our teachers, I mean, as you know, Common Core came into being, and the standards were more rigorous, and a new test came out, and everyone was really concerned about it, I think, a little bit, statewide, and our school did really well. We had the results at our last meeting, and we're really appreciative of all the efforts that have gone into this at the school. In every single grade, grades 3 through 8 that took this test, in all English language arts and in math, we were proficient or above, higher than state average in every grade in both subject areas.
That's great.
And our science numbers for kneecap, which is now really not happening except for science, we also tested 2 grades, and our 4th graders came in significantly higher than state average. Our 8th graders came in higher than state average. I think in general, science is an area that is a tough area statewide, but you know, the work that has been done and the measurements that we were shown, and even our NEWA scores, you know, as another test, if you will, or measure, show that our students are, you said the normative numbers and so forth, we're showing growth over national norms, so things are going really well. And the measurements, you know, we can have goals, but really, where are we going? What are our goals? Where are we going? How do you measure it? We have goals, everyone's working on them, and the measurements are bearing out that things are working. So I think everyone's to be commended.
Congratulations.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's a turnaround a few years ago.
It's a long time to, you know, you're gonna pilot RTI site for a while, and, you know,
You know, RTI takes a while. It's a total shift in instruction and resource management. So you can expect that as time goes on. The nice thing is, a lot of things, are when you see, test scores through the grades, they drop a little bit. Actually, I think your 8th grade has the highest.
yeah, so they're coming out for free.
Off the state average, 20%. And the other thing, your special education identification rates are dropping, which is really one of the benefits of your RTI approach. So there's some good news.
Our touch points with the high schools, you've got the Bridges program with Co Brown coming in, and teachers working with each other from the high school level and at the you know, at the middle school level, and we've got our curriculum director, as they had mentioned, you know, working with Dover, and really those touch points back and forth. So there's a lot going well, and I know the numbers are dry, but they really deserve our admiration at this point, and I'm really appreciative, and we're so happy that we can have this positive news for our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to subcommittee reports. Are there any updates? Oh, sure, sorry.
So loud and annoying. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Right. Sorry, that was loud. All right, subcommittee reports. Anything new, sir?
The MPEC committee has basically almost concluded its process. We interviewed 3 different companies to come together and give us ideas on proposals and how they could help us come to a grand master plan for the community for the use of the Marston property. Those interviews were conducted. We then made a proposal to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen have agreed to appropriate funds to put together a design plan for the Marston property. So now we're gonna start setting up. I think they're gonna end up being weekly meetings, because we need to move forward very, very quickly, but there'll be weekly meetings with the design company to start putting all of the notes and ideas and everything that everybody brought forth at the town meetings and the New Hampshire listens and the town fair and so on, and compile all that information so that we can come up with a plan for the community.
Awesome. Good stuff, anyone, move forward. Anything new on CIP after the?
CIP is meeting next Monday night, and, we're passing back on lots of articles and research on it. And I have no idea how that's gonna come as a recommendation or not recommendation.
Lots of
CIP.
information to go through.
Taken,
Lots of information to go
lots
through.
of information. On CIP though, how's the school CIP, is there anything?
It's coming together well, we're just working on our worksheet, we'll be sending it over, I guess, to Chris Sterndale, as the letterhead indicated to us. We're gonna work on Wednesday, we have a meeting coming up, so we'll be working on it in our public meeting again Wednesday. One area that I wanna get a little more clarification on with the administration is we have a number in there for field improvements. And so I do think we need to understand that in the context of Marston, and, I was at that meeting, I filled in for our regular rep, and it was really so nicely done, you guys have worked so hard. But we need to kind of work on that, make sure we've got it all pieced out properly, but we're not contemplating any debt, we don't have any now, we don't contemplate any in the near term. That's that, so we should be able to finish that up.
Transportation, anything?
Transportation, we met Monday night. I think Jackie might be here to talk about it.
Well, she's just here to watch
Yeah, she did
the
watch.
proceedings.
Yep. Just hanging out.
Do you trust me to do it justice for the one meeting I was able to go to?
Certainly, if the board is, I can certainly speak if it's out of the board.
Yeah, please do.
So we did get some more information from the transportation about possibilities of looking at consolidation routes. We need to bring that to the school board, what options are there, and see if it's appropriate this time to make recommendations, or if perhaps, where we are into the school year, is it too much on families, given that situations and schedules are already in place, given that snow season is upon us now. I think we both before discussed some of the issues in terms of consolidation might no longer bus rides for folks, or perhaps stops may not be available that were there before. So I think we've certainly learned a lot in terms of options that could be available. So we can talk to the board about moving forward now, given the school year, where we take all of this and look at next year's enrollment figures, start earlier in the process to understand perhaps where our students are choosing to go to high school, and then see if we can work with Dale earlier in the process to see if we can get some changes, perhaps proposed, brought before the public, and then discussed.
Yeah, work with the community on it. And one thing though that's the high point of all of this is that you guys worked on a contract that gives us flexibility. So there's no rush or time frame or anything. We have the flexibility within the contract to make changes that can provide potentially cost savings, but we have to constantly balance that with the well-being of the students.
Thank you. Thank you for all your efforts in that.
She did much better than I would have done. But what was said earlier was spot on. It's a very delicate balance trying to make the routes as efficient as possible without having the kids on the bus for, an hour and a half. When my oldest son was starting out in Dover, his bus trip was an hour and 40 minutes after being picked up, each way. So, yeah, it's a very long day. So I definitely, I understand it from the pain from that side of it, so, definitely they put a lot, what's that?
How long does it take to walk?
I know.
That always was an option, but yeah, they've done a lot of work to, come up with proposed routes that are equitable, and I think when the time comes, it'll be received well.
Great.
Just out of curiosity, what's the start times of the schools? Like, what time does Co-Brown start, Dover start, Nottingham start?
And we're in Co-Brown
Everybody
all
know?
Nottingham starts at
8:10.
8:10.
Okay.
8:10 is when the bell goes off in Nottingham, I don't know about
Co-Brown
Northwood.
starts at 7:50,
Okay.
and I think Dover starts 5 minutes before that. I'd have to go back and, get the exact, I think it's 7:45, and it's a little longer there, so we're always trying to balance things, and we have.
2:30, I think?
Hmm?
2:30
Getting out?
for Dover, is it
Um,
right?
I think they get out around 2:30, and I think Coburn gets out, this is all, the end times seem to be pretty well lined up, but the start times are different.
That's interesting, just because my bus stop for the high school picks up at 6:36. That's a long ride.
You have a child on the bus?
No, I don't, but the bus stop's right in front
Oh,
of my
right in
house.
front of your house.
Yeah, and I hear it every morning, the driver's like clockwork, I have to say, but, I mean, that does make.
Those are early times, they definitely are for the high school kids in particular, and then we have some buses, at least a couple that are meeting.
Yes.
You know, because really people talk about, it's this school's bus or that school's bus, they're all Nottingham buses, and we're trying to, fill them up, and we're trying to use them and share them together. We've got kids getting on from both schools and then dropping off, and
That's
a lot of, marshaling of children around, but actually young adults at that point, but they wouldn't wanna be called children.
I think if I recall, the Dover bus from Nottingham would arrive at Dover High at like 7:25.
Yeah, there's 3 going over there, and I think they probably hit there slightly different
Yeah.
times. Do you remember the start time when Andrew was there?
I don't, but I remember like he had like 10 or 15 minutes from when the bus got there, so that's why I remember, it was like 7:25, the bus would technically get there.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think they definitely start a little bit earlier.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other business? Roundtable? Suzanne, wanna start us off?
I'm learning a lot. I don't really have anything to add, but I am learning a lot, and I have a lot of past information to review to get up to speed on everything, and I intend to do that.
We, signed a new contract with the assessing firm, 5 years. It is actually less expensive than it's been for the last 5 years.
Great,
So,
Except that they're gonna assess our houses higher.
let's go higher.
I was gonna say, I've had a $500 increase to balance that out.
It's good
Know
though
what we
when
should
the
do about that,
evaluation
though.
goes up,
Yeah.
in some ways, as townwide.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Pass.
And pass as well.
Good, thank you.
I'm great, thank you.
Same here, motion to adjourn?
In a second,
Second.
all in favor? Any abstains?